Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at WinBet. I'm your host, John McKechnie, joined as always by Mario Puig. A lot to get to here on this Wednesday. We got some breaking news to digest. The Tyreek Hill trade, it's gone down. We're going to get into all that. We're also going to get into some of the other major movement from around the league over the course of this last week. Let's dig in. Welcome back in. RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast brought to you by WinBet. John McKechnie, Mario Puig hanging out with you here on this Wednesday. Busy Wednesday, Mario. We'll kick things off with the big news that broke just about 40 minutes ago. So really our podcast schedule lined up nicely with the NFL's content mill. As we see here, the Chiefs, per Adam Schefter, the Chiefs are trading six-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins for 5 draft picks. That's a 22 first-round pick, not the 29th overall, a second-round pick, a fourth-round pick, as well as fourth and sixth-round picks in the 2023 draft. Miami also getting a contract extension in place for Tyreek Hill, 4 years, $120 million. That's $72.2 million guaranteed. So, Mario, what's your reaction on this? Because it feels like this happened so fast. Maybe my finger hasn't been on the pulse in Kansas City enough lately, but I saw the reports earlier Wednesday morning that suggested that extension talks had broken off between Hill and the Chiefs, and that the Jets and the Dolphins were both interested. But, I mean, for it to go from that to Tyreek Hill is a Dolphin on a new contract in just a matter of hours, that feels like an extremely quick succession of developments.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. I never really looked at the Chiefs cap situation beyond sometimes I'll just look at a team's cap situation and be like, who do I not like on this team? What contract pisses me off? And I remember looking at Anthony Hitchens and Frank Clark for $30 million. What the hell? But I didn't think of Tyreek Hill getting traded. That was the last thing I was looking for. So it's got to be cap reasons. It's not performance that they're gaining with this trade. They're just trying to cut money. Mahomes contract. I guess Chris Jones has to be up there. I don't know what else is taking up so much cap space. They might be losing I don't know if Matthew is a free agent too. They already lost Travarius Ward, right? So yeah, they're hurting. They've gotten themselves into a bit of a rough spot with some of their transactions. And yeah, I certainly I don't understand why Frank Clark and Hitchens are still on the team before Tyreek was traded, but maybe they'll be next or something.
It's just the recurring theme of this entire offseason, I feel like, has been how the AFC West continues to kind of accrue power. And this is the first real bloodletting from one of these teams, and it's a team that I think most people would have penciled in as their favorite to win the division next year, if not the Super Bowl. But how does this change the Chiefs' dynamic on offense? Are there any real replacements? I mean, we both like Juju Smith-Schuster, but Tyreek Hill, he is not. So how are they going to be able to replace this? Obviously, it's a good year to need a receiver in the draft, things like that. But again, Tyreek Hill just changed so much of how teams were able to defend the Chiefs. You have so much bandwidth that you need to, allocate to just not letting him beat you over the top. Now that's gone. They still have some speed in the form of Mecole Hardman. I think I might be missing something here, but MVS I think could be on the radar for the Chiefs as well. So that's more speed, but again, none of this even comes close to adding up to replacing Tyreek Hill necessarily. So what do the Chiefs do from here?
Yeah, I guess you can see the singular nature of the threat that Tyreek Hill poses, specifically with that Tampa Bay regular season game from 2 years ago, when in the first half Tyreek had 250 yards, and then in the second half he only had 30 or whatever. But that was all just the result of the Buccaneers in the first half playing man coverage, and in the second half playing the most opposite of that they could think of, which is to say they tried to cover Hill in the first half, and he showed how impossible it was. He showed that, like, to even get step one going in the question of defending him, you have to completely concede a style of defense that has been the standard, like the by default way of playing defense. Like, it's 100% not viable against him. So there's other players where that sort of trend also bears out, where it's like you can't cover them. But to see the distinction illustrated that jarringly was just, I mean, it's even now it's almost unthinkable. But at the time, like, the way he got to 200 yards so fast, it was just unmistakable. It was just like, this is a way of playing against him that will never work. You'll never even start to get any traction against him.
No.
So anyway, I guess you can't replace that effect. Mecole, I think, is pretty clearly a good role player. Like, he's, I think, capable of being a good third pass catcher in a good NFL offense, good NFL passing offense. And I am maybe biased sort of player like him because I appreciate the additional benefit that he provides, where because of his speed, the defense is just fundamentally playing him differently than someone else who doesn't have his speed. And if they aren't prepared to treat him with that level of respect, he can beat them over the top. Like, one thing that I don't understand, is so hard to get people to understand, is that Mecole Hardman is a uniquely dangerous big play threat. And I will give Reed some blame for how they mostly used him underneath last year. But the fact is, too, defenses tried to sit deep on Mecole the same way they were on Tyreek Hill. Like, Mecole Hardman, too, was not getting half of a field without a safety over the top. It just wasn't happening. So, like, they were getting some of those plays that happening where Mahomes is sitting back, patting the ball, no one's getting open. Darrell Williams has not been covered within 20 yards of him for a full 8 seconds, and Mahomes is holding onto the ball. That's because the safety went with Hardman, too. So just because Hill is gone doesn't mean that Hardman's all of a sudden going to get, really primo looks or whatever. But there is target slack, a lot of it. Kelsey can't pick it up. Juju, I think, is going to be really good. I think people are wrong to doubt him, however many people might. But yeah, I think the way that the Chiefs should run it next year is just Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelsey are your, like, target volume guys, and Mecole Hardman is the one that you keep him running deep as much as possible, because if the safeties decide that they're going to be cute and try to jump a pass over the middle on Kelsey or Smith-Schuster, you can make them pay a 6-point price for that when Hardman's on the field. And I think they should be able to appreciate that, especially if not to rule them out taking a first-round wide receiver. In fact, I would almost kind of expect them. It would be good for them to target Jameson Williams or Chris Olave. I'm sure some others would be worth their time too, but those two in particular would be a great complement to Juju, Kelsey, even Hardman. Like, it would just make both corners of the end zone a huge concern for the defense on every single play. But Marquez Valdes-Scantling has otherwise been linked to them and is apparently visiting them. It's really frustrating to me that the level of, like, discourse and the literature on fantasy football, wide receiver play, whatever, has gotten us to this point. But people seem to be confused about who, like, how Mecole Hardman compares to a player like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Like, I had somebody in my mentions bothering me about, like, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is clearly more reliable than Hardman. Like, no, you're just making that up. That has never been the case. Marquez Valdes-Scantling hasn't even caught half of his NFL targets. Mecole Hardman has caught about 2/3 for almost 10 yards a target. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is like 16 points lower in yards per target and 26 less in catch percentage than Hardman. These players are not comparable. One is good, one is a total decoy, and there's a big difference between the two of them. So if Hardman's only competition is Valdes-Scantling, I definitely take the over on his numbers this year, but they should try to get Olave or Jameson Williams.
So we think that going with the speed route, but Williams obviously presents that. Olave to a slightly lesser extent, at least we think so. Williams obviously unable to test at the combine, but he's got legit game speed. No one in this class other than, I guess, Tyquan Thornton theoretically has that type of
Danny Gray, but I don't really believe in him all that much.
No, and I'm not the biggest Thornton guy myself
Velus
either.
Jones, I guess.
But we start to see what this offense looks like now, and it's just it's hard to imagine it not having some hiccups. And we were seeing this offense struggle in ways that it hasn't under Patrick Mahomes this past season. For a lot of the regular season, we never knew if they were going to get in gear. They finally did in a couple of those playoff games, and then ended up losing to the Bengals, of course. Impressive against the Bills and the Steelers, to be clear. But losing Tyree, I trust Mahomes. I still think that he might be just pound for pound the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. But you can't say that he hasn't also had an elite supporting cast around him. And I'm not sure that I'm characterizing it that same way without Tyreek Hill, no matter who they bring in to try to replace.
Yeah, the one thing I hate about their situation is I think they should be fine if they are prepared to act on the threat of running and are capable of running well. To get Clyde Edwards-Helaire going, they need to feed him the way that they did in his first 3 starts before they got distracted and whatever. Before they started being impressed watching McKinnon and Darrell Williams run against a defenseless field. And the defense was always there when Clyde Edwards was on the field, and being able to understand that, hey, that's good that the defense cares. That might get somebody to defend Hardman or Juju Smith-Schuster or Kelsey a little bit less. But instead, they looked at that 0 coverage on those guys and said, hey, let's bench Edwards-Helaire and see if that fixes everything. It won't. You will bury yourself if you go down that route. And the problem is, I don't have any good reason to assume Reed does anything different. Like, he is consistently wrong about his personnel decisions. So they're losing a lot of talent, and there's not any reason to give Andy Reid the benefit of the doubt as far as like coming up with a really good plan, especially right away.
So with that in mind, who's the best player in this offense? Does it remain Travis Kelce? Do you expect him, who's going to be turning 33 this upcoming season? Do you expect him to be able to hold up?
I guess.
How much do you expect the helium to kick in? Because it did.
I don't think it will.
No,
because I don't know how people reconcile the proper level of respect for Juju Smith-Schuster without clinging to Deontay Johnson trutherism. I don't like. There's this very influential mode of thinking right now that like target counts are skill per se. And if you believe that, and if you know who Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster are, you can't evaluate them as similarly. You have to add like a new condition that kind of contradicts the first one. So I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, Juju's just a bum. Fade Mahomes is reasonable enough. I mean, we'll see where his new price is. I imagine that's going to go down maybe quite a bit. But I think you're going to see that, and I think you're going to see people telling you to put all your chips on whatever receiver they draft, which I'm a fan of certainly Olave and Jameson Williams. And even in Williams' case, I'm not convinced that ACL keeps him out a single game. So I'm on board with those guys, but I don't know if the way people think right now and the general markets around these players is capable of valuing any of them. Kelsey, I guess, will be valued, but I don't think the bargain element is there. Like you need him to rake to pay off at his price.
Right. You got to think that he's, in light of this,
he might go up. Kelsey might go up in the ADP.
It would not surprise me. I mean,
I don't think he should really.
I don't either, but
I think he's maxed out. Yeah.
I mean, we saw his yards per target drop off by like 1.5 yards last year. Had 6 drops that tied for the most in his career to this point. And I mean, this is just a lot of years in a row with 120 plus targets for him. And at this stage, I worry that there's not like a massive cliff for him, but I think that just penciling in that he's going to be this automatic touchdown and reception machine. I stop short of that, at least when it comes to when you're picking him over someone else in the late first round. I think I'm probably going to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I'm worried about the durability. If the price stays the same on Kelsey, then I think I'm interested just because, especially at least in PPR, I'm interested still just because at that level of usage, he can be downright ugly and still pay off in fantasy. But if we need the touchdowns, yeah, I am worried about like the touchdowns and the yardage per target falling off here.
Yeah, I think the PPR wrinkle definitely checks out as far as something to focus on. Sort of almost like the Najee Harris corollary from a year ago, where fantasy production wise, awesome. per touch. Awful.
Yeah, 110 catches for 1,000 yards is ugly, but it will pay in PPR.
Yeah, 100%. So let's go ahead. Let's zoom it out. What is like? How do you power rank the AFC West now in light of this move, and now with the Raiders acquiring Davante Adams, the Chargers with everything that they've done, and the Broncos too? I mean, this on paper is about as loaded of a division as we maybe have ever seen. And now that the Chiefs have been the one that blinked and have been the guys that had the biggest contribution loss of this group of four teams.
Yeah, I will say I think the Chiefs still have time. If they add Olave, I'm high enough on him that I'm kind of just like, all right, show's back on. We're fine. But if they don't get somebody like that, yeah, they're just kind of less than before, and there's not much to be done about it except wait till next year. The Raiders are a tough one for me to figure out exactly what I think, just because I guess their offensive line fell off a bit last year. I don't know how much that had to do with injuries. I don't know if it's just going to bounce back for no particular reason this year. If it does, yeah, they're pretty tough. I'm a big fan of Chandler Jones. Him and Max Crosby is a lot more dangerous than the already dangerous tandem of Ngakoue and Crosby. Chandler Jones, very different level entirely. So that could get pretty nasty, especially if they're getting leads. And I definitely think Davante Adams is a big upgrade for them, but I do wonder if it's really going to change their entire category as an offense. Like, I thought they were already pretty good, and I'm not really ready to consider them great just because they added another good 10-yard and under average depth of target receiver. Like, Darren Waller is probably the best downfield threat in that offense right now. Hunter Renfrow, he's 7 yards within the line of scrimmage. Davante Adams, 8-9 yards within the line of scrimmage. So that maybe the field's wide enough to support those guys. And I definitely have faith in Josh McDaniels. I think Carr is more or less good enough. But I don't know if, like, I definitely am leaving out of the question the possibility of Adams posting numbers like he did in Green Bay. I think Davante Adams on this team, yeah, he's going to catch 110 passes probably, but I think it's going to be like 7.6 yards per target, not like 9.5 or whatever it was with Rodgers. Like, there's going to be a drop off there. So I guess I picked the Chargers as the favorite just because I'm so high on Herbert. Herbert has already gunned it out with Mahomes despite having less than great supporting cast. So if they add Olave or Jameson Williams, that could be the best offense in the league just with that move there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they just need a little bit more speed at receiver do the Chargers, and I suppose that the Raiders do too. Obviously with everything that happened with that last year, we know that they are lacking the obvious speed element because, like you said, Davante Adams and Renfrow are two guys that are not.
I think they can run a little, like it's best to have that downfield speed, but if you don't, and if you only have horizontal pass catchers, you can still make it work if you can bash in between the tackles and make those two safeties walk up closer to the line of scrimmage. And I think that Josh Jacobs could do that. And I think they'll have an up-tempo offense to kind of log a lot of plays, even if it takes them a lot of plays to get into scoring range. So I think it'll all work. But I think with the Chargers, if they get some real speed for Herbert to work with, he can just strike from anywhere.
Yeah, Herbert is unbelievable. Obviously, Mahomes is still the best quarterback, likely in the league and in the division for sure. But Herbert closing that gap. This will be his third season. Yeah, if Keenan Allen can continue to hold up and be as reliable as he is, and if Eckler can keep things rolling, then there's so much to like about this Chargers team. It's really hard to parse out. And then we haven't even touched on a Broncos team, the team that has been held up for years as like, oh, they're just a quarterback away. They got a quarterback, and look at it now. Like, they are the fourth team that we're discussing in the AFC West.
Yeah, they're looking way better with that quarterback upgrade. I am probably not quite as high on Russell Wilson as some people, and I'm a little worried that he's not a great fit with Jerry Jeudy. If Jerry Judy's playing in the slot, like, they might want to make their base formation Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton outside and Albert Okwuegbunam playing slot receiver, because Tyler Lockett never really got going underneath and in the intermediate with the Seahawks. I don't think that's because he couldn't. I think it's just that Russell Wilson doesn't really look to that range of the field until you get to a 10, 12 plus yard depth and you're stressing the safeties down the seam. And that's where you would hit Lockett all the time. It's not common to see a slot receiver who's a downfield specialist with super high efficiency like Tyler Lockett was with the Seahawks. And I don't think Jeudy can play that game. I think Okwuegbunam is probably a little better for that post route. So we'll see. It's going to be good, including for Jeudy. Like, it's got to be an upgrade for Jeudy, even if he's not 100% hitting every cylinder. I just think that I just think highly of Jeudy, and I could imagine him easily catching like 100 passes in a different scenario, but not this one.
Okay, all right. So it's an interesting nugget on Jeudy and his potential alignment. But they got a new coaching staff in there, so I mean they're kind of starting fresh, which I think is bodes well for the Broncos overall. But I guess the way I view it is probably Chargers by a hair, then Chiefs, then Raiders, then Broncos.
Yeah, I don't mean to actually disagree, but just to be pedantic, I'll say the same thing for the Chargers, but the other three all on the same line right underneath.
Got it. Okay. All right. That checks out. But yeah, the AFC is it is so beyond loaded, and now the Dolphins obviously get a little bit more interesting. But I think one of the big takeaways from our podcast last week was our discussion on Tua Tagovailoa and the health of this Miami offense. And they've done things, of course, to help put him in position to succeed. It's not just Tyreek Hill. Getting Teron Armstead, getting Connor Williams, adding a little bit to that backfield. I mean, Chase Edmonds, they just have a bunch of just a guy types in that backfield, but it's not.
We got a lot of speed all of a sudden,
and tons of speed, and the offensive line should be better. It was one of the worst, if not the worst, if I remember correctly, last year. So
their offensive line still might be bad at 4 spots, but if Armstead can stay healthy, that's a good start, certainly. And the other thing is with speed, like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Gesicki all on the field at the same time, and I guess maybe even Mostert factors in some looks. Like, you're just not going to blitz as much as a defensive coordinator. You're going to be careful about going after the quarterback too aggressively. So that offensive line probably still sucks. But even aside from the Armstead improvement, like, you're not going to see defenses approach them the same now. They just won't. They can't do it.
But what does that mean exactly? But Miami's obviously going to be approached differently by opposing defenses. But what does Tua need to do to take the next step? Is Tyreek Hill, like, when you watched Tua last year, did it feel like if they had one more insane speed option other than Jalen Waddle, who they were just running on these really short routes and not really even maximizing his skill set necessarily? I mean, this does bring some concern to me, like, in the sense that I don't necessarily feel like that this fixes everything for Miami. I worry that the Tua is the thread that might unravel the whole deal.
Yeah, so I was saying maybe in our last podcast that things sounded really bad for Tua, and they do. It seems like he's not very good at all. But when you have these receivers, you probably don't need to be good to put up, certainly for fantasy purposes, we don't care after a certain point. They might lose a lot of close games or something. They might go 8-9 doing it, but they're probably going to complete a lot of passes with players like this. It almost doesn't matter who the quarterback is. And as bad as Tua has been, he still was a better player, the better exact same style of player at Alabama than Mac Jones was. And Mac Jones, he doesn't look like a world beater or anything, but you don't see the panic in New England like you do around Tua. And I think a lot of that is personality, but I do think there has to be some ability similarities there. Like, if there is, then I just can't imagine Tua being bad enough to blow it with Hill, Waddle, and Gesicki all on the field at the same time. And Mostert and Edmonds might draw some level of attention from the middle of the field defense. So you've got the scenario where even if Tua is just some noodle-armed coward quarterback who can only throw like 6 or 7 yards at a time, it's okay, that's not great. But if you must do that, having on the left side Tyreek Hill and having on the right side Waddle, having Gesicki in the middle of the field for the safeties to make the safety pay if they try to double either receiver in question. Like that just might be too tough on a defense to defend. It might just be, the defense is playing on all Madden and Tua's playing on rookie level, basically. Like he can be terrible and still kind of just not be bad enough to make the machine stop working.
So with this Tyreek news, where do you envision his ADP settling in right now? Because his ADP dating back to like the start of draft season, so I haven't filtered it super closely over the last couple of weeks. But overall, Tyreek Hill is going on average like a pick above Deebo Samuel and a couple ahead of Stephon Diggs. If you were to re-rank that trio, how would you do it?
Yeah, I would definitely take Diggs. Debo's tougher just because I feel like the durability and the question of the running versus receiving usage is such a weird question. It's kind of hard for me to have a strong opinion on where he goes. So, but with the other case, you have a player who should draw a similar target share, if not higher, because I like Gabriel Davis a lot, but he's not Jalen Waddle. So like Diggs could have a higher share of a better offense. The offense will be better. The question is, does Tyreek have a higher enough share than Diggs to close the gap? And I don't think he will. I don't know. I just can't really see it.
No, I don't either. I think Waddle has really, locked himself into, where he'll be seeing 20+% of the targets. So that, take that off the board. You have Gesicki's role. I don't necessarily envision Hill like getting peppered with targets, maybe enough or relative to the share that the Diggs will. So I like the Diggs call there, and all those guys going early second in 12 teamers. Tyreek Hill the 13th in ADP, Deebo 14th, Stephon Diggs 16th. So kind of a sweet spot for receivers there.
Diggs there, yeah.
Love that. We'll see where Hill's new ADP settles in. That's definitely going to be interesting. Before we move on over to our next topics, got a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. We also got a message from our friends over at WynnBET. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at Baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 9 states as Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. Register for WynnBET today, make a qualifying deposit, and wager to receive $200 in free bets. Promotion may vary by state. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. All right, Mario, so we've done a lot of talk on just the movement from today, just from Wednesday. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's talk about this Deshaun Watson move to Cleveland. Your thoughts on, how that changes the fortunes potentially of that franchise. Did you think that Cleveland was going to be the team that came out with him? And, what do we think of, what is now a pretty loaded on paper AFC North?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with Deshaun Watson. His talent is not one of them. So he's probably, assuming he doesn't have a case of the yips, like guilty yips or something, and he's probably going to be, I don't know, as high as like a top 5 quarterback whenever, if he's not suspended, this year, but whenever he plays next, basically. I don't know. Has there been any concrete assurance on what that'll be? On the one hand, I can imagine the NFL just not giving him a suspension for the same reason they didn't suspend Tyreek Hill, which is that for the nature of the offense in question, you can't offset the ambiguity of the ruling with the severity of the crime and putting like a middle ground half measure sort of punishment. Like you can't say, well, we didn't convict you. You didn't get convicted of that, but it still looked awfully suspicious. So 2 games, You have to say like you're guilty full year, or we didn't see anything. It's like that's what they did with Tyreek, and they said that we didn't see anything. So maybe they can't do it this time. I don't know, but I have to believe that's their first goal of it. and I don't know what Tony Busby or whoever else has to say about it, but Deshaun is the amount of distance between like Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson is it's like an incomprehensible. It's one of those things you could put a number on it maybe, but it's like you can't really appreciate it. They're totally different categories of players.
Yeah. So, now with that in mind, and you have a Cleveland team that just got Amari Cooper, you still have one of the best run games.
They're going to pick one at 8, I bet. I bet they're going to say like Garrett Wilson or somebody, that pick, whatever that is, 9 or 10 or 8 or whatever.
Okay, so yeah, because that adds in, and you can't really have like I like Jakeem Grant and I like Anthony Schwartz. That's a lot of speed to have at your disposal, but I think you need a little bit more of a complete player. Maybe Drake London makes sense there.
They also might be signing Will Fuller.
How much more speed do they need? Well, I guess that fits nicely with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, those two have a really good history together. You've got an offensive line that just had some of the worst injury luck in the league last year. It was brutal, but on paper, when those starting 5 are healthy, that's going to keep Deshaun Watson upright.
Yeah, Chubb might average like 7 yards a carry this year.
Ooh. So yeah. So I mean, obviously, this is a splash move that has a lot of implications. So your thoughts first on this Chubb, this run game, and then how are you on this current group of pass catchers relative to ADP?
It's hard to hate Cooper. I mean, he's a good player. Dallas didn't trade him because he was playing poorly. They just their cap wouldn't really allow it. He's not reliable though. He's been injured even more than his missed games count lately would lead you to believe. There's so many games where he played 35, 40 snaps even, but it's like he was leaving every other drive and they're stretching out this, they're putting some kind of wrap on that, and it's just constant. So I don't want to assume that he'll age that well durability wise. But between him, Schwartz, if they especially add Fuller, Peoples-Jones, that's a lot of big playability, and Watson's definitely the kind of player to capitalize on it. So, somebody might not be that good on that offense and still might put up really big numbers just because of the touchdowns and like the amount of explosive plays. Otherwise, I guess David Njoku could really break out, especially with Hooper not there.
Cleveland's offense looks a whole lot more interesting now in light of all this. It's still a tough division and everything like that, and it'll take Watson, settling into a new system. But
I bet they take it. Yeah, if he doesn't have the yips and he's actually on the field, yeah.
Then they win the division.
Yeah, of course. Part of the background here is like I just think Greg Roman's such an idiot. I don't think the Ravens can compete. Otherwise, they would. Like if you were running the Ravens, John, I would pick the Ravens to win.
Thank you.
It's Greg Roman, that little tick.
Yeah, he. I don't know. He's got to change up his shirt selection. It's funky looking shirts. It's not helping his cause. Not helping us like him anymore.
Leave, Greg. Never return.
Get out of here, ghost. Let's see. Moving on elsewhere. Anything else to add on to Cleveland? Or I guess doubling back a couple of quarterback questions. Will you take? Is Tua on your radar now at ADP after this trade? And then Watson, how high is too high?
I'm going to need some sort of like legal assurance on Watson before I get interested as early as someone else in any given draft is likely to. Like, I assume someone's going to take him in like the 9th round just because like, oh, well, if he doesn't play, who cares? And if he does play, I got the QB1, and I'm never going to take that leap. I don't know how far he needs to fall. There is a certain point, basically the point where I'm like, I'm okay with just completely burning this pick. But it's whatever that point is and not any sooner, because we still don't really know what all he's on the hook for. I mean, he's looking better than he did a couple weeks ago or whatever, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to know, especially when the NFL it like literally has an arbitrary process. Like it can only be described as arbitrary. There's no precedent that needs to be adhered to. There's no standards of any sort. It's whatever Goodell decides to do, whatever he gets told to do, I guess, more likely. So I don't know where that's going. I will say Matt Ryan going to the Colts is kind of interesting. Like him and Tua are probably in a similar spot for me. Like Ryan, I think, is a pretty good player who's just, in a stable environment. give you something reliable, not much upside. Whereas with Tua, I'm not expecting upside there either, but I'm expecting consistency just for the pass catchers around him. So they're in a similar category for me. Whereas like if Watson is guaranteed to be on the field, he's a case of plus talent and plus situation, and enough situation that he can be that he can rank where his talent generally dictates, and that's very high.
So among that group going like towards like the end of the 8th, like the 9th round, so you got Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence. A little further down, you run into Tua, Matt Ryan just behind him as well. So are those different tiers? Are those far enough to where like you have to separate, your Lawrences and your Derek Carrs from those two? Or do you think that like quartet, it kind of exemplifies like the guys that if you waited on quarterback, you need to get at least one of, or maybe if you want to go like a premium and have two really good quarterbacks, that's the path you go. You go one a little bit earlier, then you target one of those four.
Yeah, I guess it could depend on what you need. Like if there's some roster constructions where you theoretically might need like a dependable quarterback, and others where you're like, I need upside right now. And if you're the second case, you're more likely maybe to rationalize guys like Tua and Lawrence higher. But if you need dependability, it's like Carr is at the top of that list from that particular group, and by quite a bit, to the point that maybe it's worth paying up more. But yeah, I guess it just kind of depends on what kind of risk you're taking, I guess. Because like I think the floor is very high for Carr and the ceiling only moderate. So like if you need more than moderate, he won't cut it. But if you can't afford less than okay, I think he does.
All right, fair summation there. I'll be interested in that tier. I'm a believer in a Trevor Lawrence bounce back, but I'm
Me
going
too.
to.
Also, I believe in Christian Kirk. I think I'm supposed to be the Trent Baalke hating guy. Like that was my bit, and
You're right.
now I gotta spend all
They
this
took the
time.
vinegar out of it.
Yeah, they're like they're blowing up my spot, whatever it is you say in these situations. But yeah, it's like you can say that he sucks. I do. I still say it. I'm not saying like Trent's good now. I'm saying Trent sucks, and the Christian Kirk contract and the Zay Jones contract, totally fine. I would have re-signed DJ Chark, but in addition to signing Christian Kirk, but it's still not as bad as like they're paying the two of them like $43 million over the next 2 years combined, and it's like Cooper and Woods something like $56 million. So it could be a lot worse, especially when you're talking about Baalke. And the one thing I will say, I really hope they get some real field stretching presence like Olave, Jameson Williams again, of course, but maybe Justin Ross would work with Lawrence in the second or third. I don't really know, but they got to get him a bit more, get him some speed, especially.
So sticking in Jacksonville for a second, you mentioned DJ Chark. I thought that he had some of the best quotes from the Urban Meyer article. Did you read it?
Yeah, and I bet people don't know this generally, but DJ Chark will pay a price from the NFL, from coaches, front offices, owners even, for saying what he said. You'll notice there weren't other on-the-record sources there.
There's pretty much just Marvin Jones.
Just the
Marvin
punter,
Jones,
I guess, technically otherwise, who said that he kicked me. So, yeah, DJ Chark will get labeled a locker room lawyer for the rest of his career for saying that, even though everyone knows it's all true, and everybody, even though no one even likes Urban Meyer, they're just this stupid, meat-headed culture that's like, don't snitch, don't break the chain of command. It's like all that crap, but an even dumber version of it, where it's like you're gonna get mad at a guy for saying Urban Meyer is a dumbass and talking about all these things that he did, but they will. That's how that culture is maintained. That's why it stays in power.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. It's unfortunate because and it's like Colonel. Maybe I can understand some of it, or like that's how it's always been. But like you don't need to like go to bat for Urban Meyer or
right. That's the other thing that's annoying too.
Whistleblower.
You're gonna have guys like Chris Doyle, that strength and conditioning guy, whatever pieces of Urban Meyer's extended network that still is in the league. It's like they're gonna badmouth Chark. They're gonna say like, oh yeah, they're going to do that thing that people do where they say, I support the message, I just don't like the way that he did it. That kind of nonsense, like the ultimate coward position of condemning it silently and, carrying a blade in the dark instead of just like putting it out in the open and taking your actual position openly because you don't want to deal with the bad PR of being, basically a stupid, callous person. They're never going to come. No one was willing to speak in that article on the record defense of Meyer, and yet there will be murmurs of like, well, Chark didn't have to, say that about him.
I tweeted this out, but after reading it, I think that the most damning part of that article, again, this article over on The Athletic, is how unsurprising any of it was. Like anything that was written.
A lot of it was out for a while too.
True. So I wish there was a little bit of more new info, but what did come across, him just constantly berating players, telling them they're all going to get cut and fired. Like
it sounds like there wasn't. Yeah, sure. It sounds like every single proceeding that they had was A, very short, and B, just like Meyer getting there and being like, who all is here? I hate all of you. You're scum.
Show me your national championship.
Your mothers should be ashamed of you all. I gotta go to this thing. Bye.
I got a dinner.
Ben's James Robinson. I'll come back later.
Oh my God! The James Robinson thing was.
I have to go hilarious. To Columbus for a reason. Can't tell you why.
They're having a special on flat iron steaks at my restaurant or something. But I don't know that article just ridiculous.
It was basically all old info, but Chark coming out and sticking his neck out to say like, yeah, go ahead and say I told you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. He definitely put his name to it, and but much respect for him. Anything else that you wanted to add on here before we run?
Not really. I'm trying to. This Hill thing is pushing it back again. I keep trying to get things finalized, posted, to basically make like an off-season March kit kind of thing of like, here's all the crap that happened in the past 2 weeks, and here's what here's the ADPs of these people. Here's where it might go, and I'm going to try to get very quickly after posting that like a final pre-draft rookie ranking thing broken into tiers up to like a top 50 or something like that. So yeah, trying to get all that out shortly after this or something.
Yes. Okay. So keep an eye for that. And Alan Seslowski, one of our video guys and NFL guys, ran a rookie mock the other week, a 3-rounder. We talked about it a little bit. Four. That's right. We expanded it after the combine. So check that out. We got write-ups from every single participant breaking down their picks. Check that out over on RotoWire.com under the NFL section. Otherwise, keep it locked here for all the latest news, notes, injuries, all that good stuff over at RotoWire.com. If you want a free trial, it's RotoWire.com/try. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Again, brought to you by our friends over at WinBet. From Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to RotoWire.com/